Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen so that people can see some slides. Can everybody hear me? Can I see a thumbs up if you can hear me? Yay. Okay. Well, we're communicating. I love it. My chosen topic today is go deeply into yourself and enjoy. And this might seem surprising because sometimes when we think about going deeply into the inner world, it feels very heavy, it feels very serious, very significant. And yet, the ultimate goal is, as Mark was saying at the beginning, to live better and actually to enjoy life. This theme was inspired by this week's Torah portion, Lech Lecha, in which God tells Abraham at the start, go forth from your land and from the land of your birth and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. And about this famous passage, Rashi has a beautiful commentary that is also in itself pretty well known among Rashi's many famous commentaries, where he says, Lech lecha lahanatcha l'tovatcha. Go forth for your enjoyment and for your good. And I think for those of us who've seen this Rashi before and who take Rashi's wisdom for granted, we might just sail on to the next Rashi without noticing how surprising and how radical this really is. Because when you think of Abraham, you don't automatically think of a life of benefit and enjoyment. You think of a life of sacrifice and of trial, his famous 10 trials. Think about all the losses or near losses of Abraham's life. That he went through wars and the kidnapping of a nephew and was afraid of losing his own life and afraid of losing his wife and delays to having children that pained him. And then he finally had them, and then they were threatened, and they were threatened with the very words, Lech lecha. Lech lecha al eretz ha-moriah is repeated, this phrase, go forth, is repeated again at his greatest trial, the trial of the binding of Isaac. So one imagines this, Mazel Tov, Abraham, you've been called. Enjoy your 10 trials. It seems a very strange thing if you really think about it. And Lech lecha, while it colloquially means go forth or get yourself out or surely go, literally can mean go to yourself or go for yourself. And so it turns us back to this focus on the inner life. So how can we enjoy life even in the midst of trials and storms? That is a question for a pandemic as well as every other time. And I want to draw a little bit on positive psychology. I love Jewish text study, and I love combining it with positive psychology. There's a whole technology to savoring the enjoyable and the good. And it begins with understanding and confirming that human beings have an inbuilt negativity bias. Anybody who's ever produced a work product that received a lot of praise and one negative comment knows exactly what I'm talking about, because our mind goes to what's negative, what's wrong, what's missing. And that's natural, and it's part of our evolutionary heritage, because we are descended from the people who worried, not just as Jews, but as humans. The people who didn't worry, who were very blissed out and meditating in the primordial times, were the ones who got eaten by the saber-toothed tigers. So here we are with a default negativity bias, a tendency to notice what is not good, what is the trial and not the triumph. But psychology and spirituality both tell us that what you focus on increases. And I put increases in quotation marks because it doesn't necessarily increase in measurable terms, but it increases in terms of your experience. So if you've ever learned a new vocabulary word and then seen it everywhere, or shopped for a certain make of car and then noticed it all the time on the road, you know what I'm talking about. Tal Ben-Shahar, with whom I studied positive psychology, says that what you appreciate appreciates. In other words, when you are grateful for the good and you focus on the good, then the good grows for you because it fills your consciousness. Now, what's pleasing about this notion of savoring is it doesn't have to take long. Rick Hansen has shown that it can take as little as 10 to 30 seconds of really imbibing and savoring an experience to turn it from a fact to a lived positive experience. We all know intellectually we're blessed to be alive. We're blessed to have our faculties. We're blessed with family and community. But it's a different thing when you can soak in that awareness and drink it in the way a sponge will drink in the water. That doesn't have to take long. It just has to be intentional. And so when we focus our attention and we pay attention to the good, that increases our gratitude. And the good news is you don't have to wait for a big event or a special occasion. I hope we've all had the experience of being at a bar mitzvah or a wedding or a reunion and looking around and saying to ourselves, I want to open my eyes and my heart wide. I want to take in every minute. But we don't have to reserve that attitude for those special occasions. Even if all you're doing is going for a walk, you can take in the sensory experience of what it's like to swing your arms and for your body to move. What are you seeing? What are you noticing in your hearing as you walk? And you can notice your breath, as we of course do in our meditation practice as well. The good news is you don't only have to notice in the moment, but we can savor good experiences of the past, blessings we've already received or given, and we can anticipate blessings. How will you be a blessing in the future? What blessings are coming up for you? My grandmother was a great champion of always looking ahead on her calendar to see what good was coming her way. What may be surprising is that noticing the passage of time and bittersweet endings can actually help us savor what is good. I'm going through this right now because my son is applying to colleges. So every time it's Shabbat, I think to myself, only so many more Shabbatot with him at home. Each one is extra precious to me. We see the effect of bittersweet endings in the Gomel blessing. People recite a blessing for having gone through a dangerous passage. They've been through a trauma. And yet, there they stand reciting a blessing of gratitude, and in my experience, so often feeling deep gratitude because they know that they've been spared in some measure, that things could have been even worse, that at least they came through it, and so on. So one of the mantras of positive psychology is this won't last forever, which may sound familiar, Gam ze yavor. And also, we see built into the Jewish calendar that an awareness of the passage of time, whether it's through Havdalah or through a confrontation of mortality on the high holidays, is meant to inspire us to enjoy and savor the time that we do have and to hold it as precious and use it well. Now, when we think about our life passages, positive psychologists sometimes use a checklist that they call Spire. And here I've listed it as Aspire because I like to add an A. What do positive experiences cause us to aspire to? When we're blessed, how does it affect us spiritually? Where do we feel it in our bodies? How does it affect our mindsets, our relationships, and our emotions? So I'm going to stop my screen share now so that we can begin to practice some of the savoring that I've been talking about. I want to invite you to take a deep breath, slow breath, and then another. And on your next exhale, gently allow your eyes to close or soften and lower your gaze so that we can lech lecha, go on a journey within. Take another couple of slow, deep breaths, lengthening the exhales to last even a little bit longer than the inhales. And after 2 cycles of slow, deep breaths, just breathe normally at your own pace. And notice how that feels. And you can adjust your posture if you wish to sit tall and comfortably as you breathe and you notice your breath. If you're aware of any tension in your body, just imagine that each in-breath is helping to unwind that tension, and each out-breath is helping to release it. Let your shoulders drop and your jaw go slack. Relax your hands and your belly. Relax the muscles around your eyes. Breathe and relax. And as you continue to breathe and notice breath, call to mind a past experience of goodness when you were blessed. It could be something recent or a long time ago, a big gift or an enormous kindness that you received, or some small gesture or show of support. When and by whom were you blessed? Whatever first comes to mind is good. And if nothing comes to mind right away, you can just scan this past week for some small blessing that came your way, a kind word, someone who listened to you or just gave you a smile. Take a moment or two, a few cycles of breaths to just savor this experience. Imagine the setting of where you were. See the episode as if watching a powerful, affecting movie. Listen to the soundtrack of what happened when you received your blessing. And jump into this movie or vision that you might have of when you were blessed. Relive the experience from the inside. What did it feel like in your body when you were blessed? Did the experience register in your breathing, in your posture, in your sense of energy? See if you can sense those same feelings in your body right now. Reflecting on the blessing that was bestowed on you. Did it then, or does it right now inspire you to any mood or attitude or action? What emotions rise up now when you dwell in that blessing? Imagine for a moment if this blessing had not come to you. What would have been lost? However minor or however significant, what would be missing if you did not have this blessing? And now take a moment to bask in the blessing that nothing was lost. You had the blessing then, and you have it now. Take some more cycles of breaths to just relish your blessing. Acknowledge who and what brought it to you, including yourself right now. And enjoy it. Take a slightly deeper breath and an even longer exhale. And release the glory of that blessing to the world. Clear your mind. And now call to mind an experience of goodness where you were a blessing. You offered encouragement or support. You pitched in with material help. It may have been a major effort or gift, or perhaps it seems small to you or easy to do. You were a blessing. Visited a sick friend, paid a Shiva call, returned a lost wallet, wrote a note of encouragement. What comes to mind for you? How were you a blessing? And where in your body, as you think of being a blessing, do you feel a sense of gratitude? Feel a swelling in the heart, or sense that you're a little taller, perhaps? How does your body register that you were a blessing? What relationship was created or enhanced because you were a blessing, including your relationship to yourself and to God? What relationship was changed or affected? How did you feel at the time about your contribution? And how do you feel now? Really savor and take in the blessing of being a blessing. Was there an insight or a mental pattern strengthened by the blessing you gave? Was there some new insight? Something perhaps coming to you now? What guidance or blessing did you receive in the past that prepared you to be a blessing? Maybe you had a divine intuition to act in this case, or maybe you were affected by a certain text or prayer, or by your mindfulness practice. Maybe a teacher or a mentor pointed the way for you. Take a moment to savor whoever taught you and whatever helped you and prepared you to be a blessing. What do you want to gather up and take forward from this experience of being a blessing? Relish now whatever you choose to harvest. The next sound you hear will be a chime to let you know in a minute or so it will be time to gently rub your hands together and open your eyes. Now enjoy. Thank you, everyone. I want to close with just two offerings, two suggestions of how else we might savor. One is to celebrate, and Mark actually started us off with this. BJ Fogg talks about the importance of congratulating yourself, literally giving yourself a pat on the back. So I'm going to encourage everyone now to do a gesture, a thumbs up, a hands over the heart, some way of acknowledging yourself, to enjoy the enjoyment for having been here and for having given yourself the gift of this practice. And lastly, we can share experiences to grow them. So when you have a positive experience, talk about it, share it, write about it, journal it, and relive it in company if you can. I look forward to doing some of that with you in the Q&A. And I want to turn things now over to Mark. Thank you and shalom.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Debra. Looking forward to exploring that more also in the conversation in a few minutes. For those who may be leaving, I just want to remind you that we will have a new link for the mindfulness meditation starting next Monday, this coming week. So be sure not to click on the link you used for today, or which has been the same link for quite a while, but brand new link, which we hope will resolve some of our issues around the chat function. So it will be in your daily reminder. All you need to do is click on the link in that reminder starting on Monday, and you'll be fine. As you know, we seal our practice, giving an opportunity for those in mourning, observing yard site, or if your custom is to engage in the mourner's Kaddish, to do so. And for the rest, those who are not reciting Kaddish, to continue your practice by being steady, compassionate, supportive presences for those who are. And we invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join me in Shabbat Kaddish. Yitgadal,
Gadal Yishkadash Shmei Rabba
Yama Debra Hirute, Yamlich Malchute, Vayikon, Kol Beit Israel, Ba'agala, Uzman Karim, Imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Barak, Le'olam, Lamnei Amaya, Barak, Yishtabach, Yitbarar, V'Olam, V'Yitase, Hadar, V'Yithavel, Kol Shmei Dekudsha B'Richu, Ilan Min Kol Birkat V'Pirat, Tushbekata V'Nechemata, Amiran Ba'alma, Yehi Shlama Rabba Mishmaya V'Chaim Aleinu V'Yavada Shalom B'Ma'asim Shalom V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Al Kol Yoshvei Tevel Imru Amen.
Amen.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm putting in the chat box the list of our wonderful leaders for next week. Looking forward to practicing next week with Rabbi Jenny Solomon on Monday, Dr. Mira Neshama Nicolescu on Tuesday, Chaplain Marita Anderson on Wednesday, Rabbi Dorothy Richmond Thursday, and on Friday to sit into Shabbat with the Kohenet Kashira Halev Fife. It's a wonderful lineup of teachers for next week. We hope you'll join us for all of those, or as many as you can. And of course, if you can't be with us live, you can always engage in the practice with the recordings on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much to our teacher for today, Rabbi Debra Ornstein. Looking forward to continuing the practice and the conversation in a moment for those who are able. Thanks to you, Gail Greenfield, for sponsoring this beautiful practice today in memory of your husband, Stanley. Zichrono Livracha, may his memory always be a blessing for you. And thanks to Tamar Yanai, who is sitting in for Adi Stein today, and as usual, holding this space with grace and skill so that we can engage in this practice. Thanks so much, Tamar. And for everyone, wish you a sweet, restorative, enjoyable Shabbat. And for those who are able to stay on, if you have a question for Rabbi Debra, please put it in the chat box and preface it with a question if it is a question, so I can keep an eye on it. And but feel free also just to share reflections, observations about how you experienced this practice today too. Always really wonderful to read that. So thank you so much, Deborah. You really amazingly concisely brought so much into that, and so there's a lot to unpack, review, and just kind of integrate a little bit. So I wanted to, you probably know since you've been around this, I like to kind of just like review the teaching, in part just for clarity, and in part just as a way of saying, oh yeah, I can bring this into the rest of the day and into the rest of my life. So I love that you built this practice off of that comment by Rashi about Lech Lecha. Actually, I'm going to see if I can bring it up. I had it right here, just to take a quick look at it to reiterate that. So, as you mentioned, Rashi, who of course is the most famous Torah and Bible commentator in our tradition, interprets that word lahanatcha, for your enjoyment, to go forth, as for the sake of hana'ah, of enjoyment. And stop the share there. So I would love to hear a little bit more about, just to unpack that, the English word enjoyment, and it's what the Hebrew even maybe, like, what does it mean? Like, what are we trying to cultivate? Because then I heard, basically I understood this as a practice of, if I can get in touch with and have the lived experience of enjoyment, that paves the way for me that opens the door to the possibility of experiencing and manifesting and sharing blessing and understanding myself as part of a larger network of blessing. So first of all, anything you want to add to that? Is that a good Cliff Note version? Oops, you muted, Deborah. And also I'm going to add you here.
Again.
Here we are.
It's a beautiful way of summarizing it. And I would only add that savoring the good is what opens the door. Because if we said, I'm going to enjoy my life when, ... And everybody has said that at one time or another, I'm going to enjoy my life when I get married, when I have kids, when the kids are out of the house, what the ... is always just out of our grasp. So we have to be able to savor the good in mixed circumstances, because there are no unmixed circumstances. And I think especially we rabbis, but everybody has had the experience of, it's sometimes the people who are in the most dire situations, people in a hospice, who are able to savor the good that they enjoy, even amidst tragic circumstances.
Yeah, that was really powerful. I was really glad you mentioned that. Even traumatic circumstances, right? You were saying.
Yeah, so I think, and Abraham is a terrific role model for that, because he did go through these.
He had a tough time.
Difficult trials, and yet it says Abraham was blessed with everything. If everything includes all the bad stuff as well as all the good stuff.
Couple of questions. Good. These are good ones too. The meditation for me was so fulfilling. It was all about my connection to people. In what way do you see it as similar to the teachings of Spire Acronym, who seems to say connection to people? Someone's paying attention to this, or Spire Acronym teaching with Rabbi Aaron this year, who seemed to say connection to people is most important because it leads to an understanding of God. For this person, enjoyment was about connection to people, and this person connected it to the Spire Acronym's teaching that connection to people leads to connection to understanding of God, which is interesting because, if you just take the literal Torah text, it's, it starts with God and then goes the other way, but maybe it works both ways.
I think there are 3 points of contact, because Abraham is also going to himself. So it's the triangle. It's yourself, it's others, and it's God. And I really think this is, talking about which way is your way in is a little bit subject to personal proclivity and also to season of life. But you can enter through any one of those portals, through your relationship to yourself, or through your relationship to other people, or through your relationship to God, and it will lead you to the other two. And that, I think, is the gift of it, is you don't have to just come into it one way. Someone was asking about the Spire acronym, and that's another way of thinking. I'll share the screen with that just so you see it. It's another way of thinking about a kind of a 360-degree perspective, that the person who wrote in the chat was speaking about the relational power of goodness, that when I am plugged into my relationships, it inspires me to be better. I derive benefit from that. I share, it lifts me emotionally, and then perhaps gives me ideas intellectually. It makes me feel good in my body. I connect to my own soul through it. Their portal was relational. But you can come through any of these aspects and it will lead you into the others. It's a holistic system and being that we enjoy.
And some more questions about the substance of the practice, but there's also a question about at the end, which I actually really appreciated and learned from, that you brought people out of the meditation by encouraging them to rub their hands together. Yeah? You want to say, there was a question about why you did that. How does that work?
One of my first meditation teacher, that was always her practice, that she would have people rub their hands together and then gently open their eyes. And it's something that I've kept, because I think that what happens sometimes in meditation is you get lost in some other realm. And it's a kind and gentle way to bring yourself back into the room. It can be a little startling if you just say, okay, open your eyes now, and you've been, in a darkened place, in an interior place. It kind of brings you back into your body and the room.
Yeah. And it is a loving way to do it. I mean, also, I think I really appreciated that. I'm gonna take that on. How can we savor experiences with family whom we love, but who really annoy us, especially with all their worry and paranoia? Not going into the details here. Is it better to just leave such family members by the wayside as they only see the risk of each experiment, not the benefits? Oh, I guess it's really a question about if you're trying to cultivate this positive, energy. What do we do when we're in the presence of those who are not doing that? And of course, I had all these jokes running through my mind, Debra. When you're talking about the positives, all these classic Jewish kvetchy jokes, right? Where the Jewish thing is to kvetch, and that's that we are trained to think critically about the world. And I think this is such an important counterbalance to that we are also taught in Jewish tradition to notice, accept, appreciate, and savor, the world. It wasn't as if God says to Abraham, go out and, find all the cracks in the world and go fix them. That might be part of it, but like what I heard today was, God basically said, Abraham, like, this is a beautiful place. Go enjoy, that's a piece of it too. But what do we do when, we're with people who are, let's say, a bit of a downer?
So one thing is, I think celebration really comes into play here. You have to honor and celebrate yourself for how you can maintain, even in the midst of other people pulling you down. Now, nobody does it perfectly. But if you've made the decision because you do love your family, or you have these, friends with flaws, who doesn't have the flaws, and so you've made the decision that these are people in your life, then when you confront their frailties, you can, with as much grace and spaciousness as you can give it, you can savor not their negativity, but your ability to hold them and to accept them and to be with them, and yet maintain your peace of mind to whatever degree is possible. And then even if you don't maintain your peace of mind perfectly, you can still do the Mark gesture that I like. I'm going to consider that the Mark Margolius gesture.
It's also a good stretch. You got a good stretch there. Yeah.
And you can celebrate and honor yourself for that. Now, there's a separate issue, and I didn't see the chat. You did, and we can't go into detail at this moment. Separate issue of if there are people who are truly toxic to you. That's a different conversation. But when people are just their imperfect selves, that's part of the landscape. And the question is, what are you going to focus on? Brings me back to that famous teaching from Pirkei Avot, Dan et kol ha'adam l'chav zchut. Judge each person by the scale of merit, giving them the benefit of the doubt. But the grammar of it says, judge the entire person, et kol ha'adam. So when you look at somebody and you're getting really annoyed at their quote unquote paranoia, they're so worried, they're so paranoid, they keep rehearsing disasters, etc. You can also, as part of that whole person picture, remember how generous they are, how they cook for you, or whatever the list is of all the positives that go along with that, and try to see them in totality.
Really nice. All right, we just got a minute and a half here, but so one last question, which I think is a really good one, about which has to do, I guess, with the distinction, if there is one, between what you're just hana'ah, enjoyment, and simcha, happiness. Someone wrote in thinking about, Rabbi Nachman's teaching mitzvah gedola le'yot b'simcha tamid, that it's a great mitzvah to always be in a state of simcha, of happiness. So is there a different distinction between what you're describing here between enjoyment and happiness?
I think there is. I think happiness is such a big word, and it incorporates so much. It can incorporate contentment, and it can incorporate peace of mind, and it can incorporate a sense of living well and pleasure and so on. I think Hana'ah is geared toward that aspect of happiness that is pleasurable, and is sensory to a degree. That's why I was focusing on the senses. But it's a deliberate turning of your attention to what is a benefit here. So it doesn't only have to be about a specific savoring experience in the way that you savor your food, specifically savoring.
Yeah,
but
Ricky Lepitz, by the way, is just throwing in like more like appreciation, kind of a. I mean, it seems like it's a little bit closer to gratitude than it is to happiness.
I actually think it's the bridge between gratitude and happiness. Is this moment of really taking it in. Because if you have your blessings, but you don't know you have them, how blessed are you? I think about the Baruch Hu in this regard. The Baruch Hu says, let us bless God who is blessed, which I've often commented, it seems a little redundant or tautological.
Right.
But we routinely curse what is cursed. You're just driving traffic for a while and you will curse what is cursed. And we don't often enough bless what is blessed. We don't stop to really notice it and take it in. And that's what this practice is, of just pausing long enough to notice and reap the benefits of that blessing that is yours, either in giving or in receiving, both ways. And that will lead to both gratitude and happiness, I believe.
That's great. All right. Well, this is, I think, just a perfect lead into Shabbat. It's a perfect pre-Shabbat practice. So I want to thank you, Debra. I'm so glad. I know you'll be back to lead us next month as well. So that's really great. Glad to have you in the rotation. I know from the comments I'm getting, people are really appreciating this. And want to wish everyone Ta'anuk Shabbat, enjoyment and pleasure on this Shabbat. Wherever you find it, may you notice and take in and appreciate and enjoy your blessings as part of your own personal journey. And thank you so much, Debra. And thanks to Tamar. Thanks to you, Gail Greenfield, for sponsoring us today. Hope to see everybody after Shabbat next Monday for a wonderful week of practice, and wish you many